Cinema is built on sound, the dialogue that drives it, the score that completes it, but sometimes, buried deep inside those familiar layers, something else lives, something no one remembers creating. Across decades of film, there are moments when the soundtrack falters, when silence reveals not absence, but presence. A faint inhale behind an actor's line, a whisper that vanishes in every remaster, a sound that shouldn't exist, yet refuses to disappear. Engineers have tried to explain them: signal bleed, compression error, a microphone left open. But even the most logical answers can't explain why some of these sounds appear only once, in one print, one screening, and never again. A few technicians have spoken quietly about phantom channels audio that registers on no device, but somehow burns itself into the final mix, as if the film itself heard something we couldn't see. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's memory, or maybe the camera wasn't the only thing capturing what happened on set. Tonight, we're not watching movies, we're listening to them. These are 15 films that caught what no one was supposed to hear. The Blair Witch Project 1999. The Blair Witch Project is the blueprint for found footage horror, raw, frantic, real. But what it found at the end was something no one meant to capture. As Heather rushes through the decaying house, screaming for Mike, her voice cracks with terror. Beneath the noise, other voices stir faint sobs, broken phrases, and one long, drawn-out breath. The filmmakers have always said all sounds were designed manually. Yet, one of them later admitted, there are noises in that reel that don't belong to us. The breath was heard only in the Sundance cut and a single DVD pressing. Later versions erased it. The source file, missing. Test audiences once saw a subtitle at that moment, unknown source later removed. If found footage reveals what the camera saw, maybe this time it revealed what was already there. Ari Aster's Hereditary thrives on discomfort, the kind that hides in corners and waits for you to breathe. But in one scene, the sound moved first. Inside the attic, as Annie searches for her son, the air hums low and heavy. Then, from the darkness, a whisper, "Peter." It's too deep to be her voice, too quiet to be in the mix. And when reversed, it becomes another word entirely: open. The line appeared only in the earliest theatrical screenings. It's missing from every Blu-ray and streaming release. When fans questioned A24, the studio offered no explanation. Audio analysts said the voice had no acoustic fingerprint, no reverb, no distance, as though it came from inside the recorder itself. When asked, Aster only said, "Sound tells the truth when images lie." Maybe this whisper wasn't an effect. Maybe it was a confession. Rosemary's Baby, 1968, Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby, is all about paranoia, the creeping sense that you're being watched, that something knows what you fear, but in one moment, that paranoia becomes sound. As Rosemary peers through the peephole toward her neighbors, the air seems to hold its breath. Then faintly, someone whispers, "We see you." No actor moves their mouth. No line in the script calls for it. Yet on early VHS editions, the whisper is clear enough to freeze you in place. When the film was remastered decades later, it vanished. Technicians claimed there was nothing there, no track, no error, just hiss. But one engineer swore the sound carried stereo movement, as if whoever whispered was walking past the microphone. Polanski once said, "Horror is when you realize you're not imagining it." Maybe that's what the sound was, proof that she wasn't. The fear of being watched, recorded by the watcher. Mulholland Drive, 2001. David Lynch builds his worlds out of sound, but one of them may have built itself. In Mulholland Drive, at Club Silencio, before the show begins, the room holds its breath. Then, cutting through the stillness, a whisper rasps one word: behind. It's not part of the script or the score. It exists only in a rare Japanese DVD release and was removed from every subsequent version. The voice doesn't match any known cast or crew. One sound engineer later admitted, "Some mixes left the studio with extra channels. We never figured out what they carried." When played backward, the voice forms something like, "Don't go back." Intentional or not, it feels like the soundtrack itself warning whoever's still listening. In a dream about illusion? This may be the only thing that was real. The Witch, 2015. In The Witch, the scariest moments aren't screams, they're the silences that breathe back. Thomasin kneels in the woods, whispering her prayers into the cold air. The wind dies. The forest holds still. And then, Faintly, something inhales sharp, human, deliberate. Robert Eggers said the scene was entirely overdubbed. No live microphones were rolling. But the sound exists on early Blu-rays, though it's missing from later ones. When reversed, the breath echoes backward, like it arrived before it was made. Folklorists have pointed out that it aligns perfectly with the film's turning point, the moment Thomason is no longer praying to something, but being heard by it. Sometimes, the silence answers first. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, 2005. Scott Derrickson's The Exorcism of Emily Rose sits on the line between courtroom drama and possession horror, and one sound in that space refuses to be explained. In the quiet of his cell, Father Moore sits alone, eyes closed, head bowed. There's no music, no dialogue, only the pulse of the lights. Then, from beneath that silence, a chant begins low, trembling, unmistakably Latin. The line doesn't appear in the script or ADR logs, yet when fans enhanced the audio, they found the translation chilling. He listens when they speak. The studio brushed it off as digital interference, but a technician later confessed that one ambient recording session at a church had been stopped early because of unusable interference. No one clarified what that meant. When the film was remastered, the chant disappeared, but some who heard it say it never sounded like a recording at all, more like a voice that didn't need a microphone. If faith invites response, maybe sound does too. Poltergeist, 1982. Few endings are louder than Poltergeist, a hurricane of screams, chaos, and collapsing walls. But hidden in that storm is something far quieter and infinitely stranger. As Diane Freeling runs with her children through the house that's falling apart, the score roars, the camera shakes, and beneath it all, a whisper slips through. It's still inside. The line isn't in the screenplay or any known mix. Audiences from 1982 remember hearing it, but every remaster since then has silenced it. One archivist discovered the phrase faintly duplicated across both channels, slightly out of sync, a layering mistake, or maybe something inserted afterward. No metadata, no record. Projectionists claimed it changed from screening to screening. A hiss one night, a voice the next. If the haunting left the house, maybe it stayed in the sound. Under the Skin, 2013. Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin is a story about an alien trying to understand humanity, but one sound suggests humanity might have noticed first. Inside a parked van, the alien watches from behind the glass, no score, no dialogue, just the hum of distant traffic. Then a breath coarse, uneven, and too close, pushes against the silence. It's missing from nearly all versions, except for one UK Blu-ray. No one in the production ever mentioned recording it. Sound analysis showed that the noise didn't move through the stereo field like normal audio. It floated between channels, as if the breath was circling the viewer. When asked, Glazer called it an artifact. Others aren't so sure. Maybe the scene wasn't just observing the world. Maybe the world was breathing back. Don't Look Now, 1973. Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now is a film about grief disguised as mystery, and in its final moments, that grief seems to find a voice. As John Baxter runs through the twisting alleys of Venice, the sound collapses into stillness. Then, through the echoing emptiness, comes a soft giggle, high-pitched, playful, and wrong. No child appears in that scene. The laugh doesn't exist in any script or studio log, yet it's present in some early European home releases, absent from all restorations. Technicians examining the source reels found no trace of a recording. One called it a sound that didn't belong to the film, but to the place. The childlike figure that ends the story never laughs, not once. But those who heard the sound insist it's there, faint, persistent, and deeply human. If sorrow has a frequency, maybe this was how it was heard. Insidious, 2010. James Wan's Insidious is filled with screams, jumps, and pounding chords, but one of its most frightening moments is barely audible. When Josh ventures into the further, the soundtrack narrows to static. The light flickers, and then a voice, low, urgent, male, says, "It's not done." The line appears only in theatrical prints and early digital versions, nowhere else. Sound engineers deny it. The composer, Joseph Bishara, swears there were no vocal elements in that scene, yet recordings from 2011 screenings capture it clearly. The frequency doesn't match any known mic. It's thinner, closer, like it was pressed directly onto the mix. An assistant editor once wrote online, "Something ended up in the final export that wasn't in the project file." If horror is about what lingers unseen, then this was the sound of something staying behind. JFK 1991. Oliver Stone's JFK is dense with noise, typewriters, footsteps, 1,000 conversations, but in one corridor, a single whisper cuts through history. As Jim Garrison moves past a crowd of reporters, the sound collapses. Then, from nowhere, a man's voice murmurs, "He didn't fall." It doesn't sync to any lips. It's not in subtitles or transcripts, but it's there, buried in the 1991 theatrical mix, never to return in later releases. When preservation teams examined the original sound reels, the voice appeared on a channel labeled Room Tone B. That track wasn't meant to contain dialogue. One engineer called it a voice built from noise. Was it an editing slip, a stray line from another take, or something recorded between frequencies? In a film about truth, maybe the evidence was whispering all along. The Others, 2001, Alejandro Amenabar designed The Others around silence, the kind that presses against your ears until you imagine what isn't there. But once, silence wasn't imagined, it was recorded. As Grace, Nicole Kidman, walks slowly through a fog-lit hallway, her footsteps barely stir the air. The frame holds. Then, from somewhere just outside it, a breath slips in, wet, ragged, almost pleading. It's not part of the score, and not on any known track. When the film was remastered for Blu-ray, the sound vanished entirely. But on early DVDs, at the 18-minute mark, that breath exists, unmistakable, human, and completely untraceable. A former post-production assistant claimed, "That hallway was shot MOS. There were no live mics. It should have been silent." Still, the waveform lingers in archived data, faint but deliberate, like a fingerprint inside the quiet. When a film about ghosts captures something unexplainable, what if it's not fiction at all? Session 9-2001. Inside the real-life Danvers State Mental Hospital, Session 9 captured more than atmosphere. It may have caught a voice. During a slow tracking shot through a decaying hallway, one of the crew pauses, no music, no dialogue, only the echo of their footsteps. Then, in the far distance, a whisper cuts through. "He's still here." No one on set recalls saying it. The actors didn't hear it, and the line isn't in any script or mix sheet. Director Brad Anderson has addressed it once. "We didn't record that. If it's in the movie, I can't explain it." Sound engineers later found no matching vocal profile in the master tracks. The waveform exists, but there's no input source, no mic, no echo, no reverb. In later releases, the voice is gone completely. But those who own the early DVD swear it's there, faint but certain, the sound of something that refused to be erased. If the building was empty, who answered back? The Ninth Gate, 1999. Roman Polanski's The Ninth Gate thrives on hidden power, but one of its most unnerving details came from a power no one controlled. While Dean Corso studies the ancient engravings, the soundtrack drops into complete stillness. Then, faint but deliberate, comes a sigh, deep, weary, and close. It lasts less than 3 seconds, but once you notice it, it's impossible to ignore. The sound isn't Johnny Depp's. It doesn't align with his breath or position. It drifts through the stereo field, as if the air itself exhaled. That sigh is present only on a single Region 2 DVD pressing, absent from every other edition. Even the composer denied using live audio textures, saying, "If you heard breathing there, it wasn't from us." Technicians called it a rogue signal, but one sound designer had another theory. Maybe the book in the scene wasn't the only thing conjured. When silence breathes, who's doing the breathing? The Innocents, 1961. The Innocents is a film about what can't be seen, but for those listening carefully, it's also about what shouldn't be heard. In one of its quietest moments, the governess walks through the mansion at night, the candle trembling in her hand, the air hums with stillness, and then a sound. A low, steady breathing, close enough to the microphone to feel real, but too detached to belong to anyone. It wasn't in the script, it wasn't in the logs, and when the film was restored decades later, the sound was gone. The original British print remains the only version where that faint breath still lingers, an echo with no origin. One restoration engineer described it best: "It's not on any track, it's inside the silence." Deborah Kerr, the film's lead, once mentioned the set's unnatural calm. "Sometimes," she said, "the silence felt like it was listening." maybe it was. A Field in England, 2013. Ben Wheatley's A Field in England isn't just a film, it's a fever dream caught on film stock, one that seems to remember something its makers don't. During the blinding strobe montage halfway through the movie, images flicker faster than the eye can register, faces distort, light fractures, and amid the chaos, a man begins to count. 1, 2, 3. His voice is calm. Steady, detached, wrong. It stops at 13. The screen flashes white. That count doesn't exist in any Blu-ray or digital version. Only a few early festival screeners contain it. There's no documentation, no cast listing, no audio file bearing the voice, but multiple viewers confirm hearing it clear, deliberate, and entirely unaccounted for. When sound analysts examined the film, they found the voice didn't behave like normal dialogue. It faded in and out between stereo channels as if walking through the mix instead of playing within it. Some believe Wheatley added it as an experiment, others think it was picked up accidentally, a trace of something that wasn't meant to be there. If the number 13 means an ending, why does it sound like the start of something else? Every film tells a story with light, but it's sound that remembers what light forgets. In these 15 films, silence wasn't empty. It was crowded with breaths, whispers, and voices that no one remembers recording. Maybe they were glitches, maybe echoes, or maybe proof that sound keeps what the eye can't see, a trace, a presence, a reminder that every quiet moment has a pulse if you listen long enough. So, what do you think these films really captured? A technical error, or something trying to be heard? Tell us what you've heard or what you thought you heard, because once you notice the sound behind the sound, you can never unhear it. This is Darkroom Cinema, and silence was never just silence.